porch light was still on when Sharlene Harris vanished from the Elm Street neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, population 493,000. Christmas Eve 1965 arrived with a blizzard that dumped more than 10 inches of snow across the city. At 9:10 p.m., Sharlene's neighbor, Evelyn Moore, glanced out her kitchen window and saw her standing in the yard, holding a small box wrapped in brown paper before heading down the walkway to the basement. Sharlene was wearing the dark green wool coat that Miss Moore had once complimented, saying she looked as warm as summer. That was the last time anyone saw the 28-year-old woman alive. What happened in the next 50 minutes would haunt Denver for half a century. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. In December 1965, Denver, Colorado, was gripped by harsh winter weather. Snow fell thickly, blanketing the old rooftops in the South Park Hill residential area, where most residents were middle-class families living peacefully. Among the row of houses, the two-story home on Elm Street, owned by Sharlene and Charles Harris, stood out due to the scaffolding and piles of construction materials stacked high in the front yard. Sharlene Harris, 28, worked as a freelance accountant, quiet but friendly, and well-known in the neighborhood. She was married to Charles Harris, 34, a small-scale building contractor whom neighbors described as reserved, private, and prone to working late in the basement. The house they lived in had been purchased by Charles 2 years earlier, and he was renovating it room by room with the hope that, once finished, it would become their long-term home. On December 18, 1965, Sharlene was last seen when she and her husband went to a building supply store on Colfax Avenue to buy cement and paint. After that point, no one saw her again. That evening, Sharlene did not attend the office Christmas party as planned, nor did she call her parents, as was her daily habit. In the following days, the phone at the Harris home rang continuously, but no one answered. Neighbors reported not seeing Sharlene outside, nor hearing her car start as usual. When the family called, Charles Harris said his wife had gone to Kansas to visit her sister for a while, but the sister confirmed there had been no call or any such plan. Sharlene's mother grew worried because her daughter had never left home without notice. The prolonged silence led the family to realize something was wrong. On December 20th, her father drove to Denver, stopping in front of the house on Elm Street, but no one answered the door. The house was silent, dark inside, despite the clock nearing 8 p.m. The next morning, December 21st, 1965, Sharlene's parents went directly to the Denver Police Department to report their daughter missing. The duty desk took the report, recording initial details about Sharlene Harris, female, 28 years old, residing at 218 Elm Street. No history of leaving home without notice. In the statement, the victim's parents affirmed that 3 days of silence was completely unusual. After completing administrative procedures, the case was transferred to the General Investigation Office of the department to assess the need for an investigation. A new file was created, classified under adult female, unexplained absence, identified as an adult missing under unclear circumstances. Lieutenant Frank Lawson, the lead investigator with years of experience handling missing persons cases, was assigned to head it. Mr. Lawson was known for being cautious, following procedures, and not drawing conclusions without concrete evidence. Assisting him was Helen Vaughn, a young female officer recently transferred from administrative duties to the civilian investigation team. In a brief afternoon meeting, Lawson instructed Vaughn to gather all information from the family, then contact the victim's husband for an initial statement. Mr. and Mrs. Cooper were asked to return to complete the report. They provided a detailed description. Sharlene was about 5'5", brown hair, wearing a light-colored sweater and wool coat when last leaving the house. They also detailed their daughter's marriage, recent disagreements over finances due to the high costs of renovating the house, mostly paid by Sharlene. According to the mother, Sharlene had complained that her husband spent too much time on the construction and rarely talked to her. Still, the two were seen together normally, with no signs of public conflict. Helen recorded all statements and asked the family to provide a phone directory, contact addresses of other members, especially Sharlene's sister in Kansas, the person Charles Harris said his wife was visiting. Lawson temporarily kept the file at missing with no determined criminal element, but he ordered the investigation team to proceed with initial verification steps. That same afternoon, Charles Harris was invited to police headquarters. He arrived on time, bringing identification and showing a cooperative attitude. In his statement, Charles said his wife left home on the morning of December 18th, saying she wanted to go to Kansas for a few days and promised to call when she arrived. He added that she only took a small handbag and some cash. When asked why he hadn't reported it sooner, Charles replied that he believed his wife needed space and would return after Christmas. Lawson noted this information but asked Helen to contact the sister in Kansas to verify. In the end-of-day summary, Helen proposed a list of steps, determine the last time Sharlene was seen, cross-check information from her workplace and residence area, review phone records, and note the marital relationship through neighborhood witnesses. Lawson approved the plan, assigning Helen to gather on-site information and report back within 48 hours. The case file was officially opened with code DPD 65-1472, noted as in the basic fact verification phase. The disappearance of Sharlene Harris officially entered the initial investigation stage. Immediately after completing the first session with Charles Harris, the investigation team began verifying the information he provided. Helen Vaughn was tasked with contacting Sharlene's sister in Kansas, the alleged destination of the trip Charles mentioned. The call was made on the morning of December 22nd, recorded and filed internally. The sister confirmed that she had received no calls, telegrams, or letters from Sharlene that week, nor any prior knowledge of a planned visit to Kansas. When asked about their last conversation, she said it was a call in early December, about accounting work and general family finances, with nothing unusual. Helen noted in the report, no evidence to confirm Sharlene left Denver to visit family. That same day, another team was sent to the accounting office, where Sharlene worked freelance in downtown Denver. The bookkeeping staff confirmed Sharlene had not appeared at the office since the afternoon of December 17th, and left no messages for colleagues. On her desk, client files were unfinished, with pens and ledgers still open. The accounting office also confirmed Sharlene had not received any payments that week, indicating she was not preparing for a long trip. The report was sent back to Lawson by late afternoon. Meanwhile, Helen returned to Elm Street to verify with neighbors near the Harris home. Two adjacent households said they saw Sharlene and her husband leave around 4:30 p.m. on December 18th and return near 6 p.m. One neighbor said the house lights stayed on late, but they heard no unusual noises. This matched Charles's statement about working in the basement that evening. However, when Helen asked about Sharlene carrying luggage or leaving by car, both neighbors said they saw no handbag or her driving away. Her car, they said, remained parked at the curb all weekend. Helen reported these details to Lawson, suggesting a recheck of vehicle information. The next morning, a small investigation team was sent to document the condition of the vehicle registered to Sharlene Harris. The car was in normal condition, with no signs of recent use. In the file notes, Lawson observed that Charles's statement about his wife taking a small handbag and possibly traveling by bus has not been proven by actual evidence. He asked Helen to continue checking long-distance bus stations in the area for any matching passengers. Checks at Denver's three main bus terminals, Union, Colfax, and Larimer, showed no passengers matching Sharlene Harris's description or name on lists for December 18th and 19th. There were also no pre-booked tickets or payment transactions related to her in the transportation company's records. Lawson compiled all data, creating a detailed timeline based on verified points. 12/18, 4:30 p.m., left home with husband. 5:30 p.m., seen at building supply store. 6 o'clock p.m., returned home. After this, no one saw or heard from her. By the morning of 12/21, family reported to police. The entire nearly 60-hour period had no trace of the victim. In the report sent to superiors on December 23, Lawson wrote, "No specific evidence that the victim left voluntarily. Husband's information about the Kansas trip unconfirmed. Current data suggest a local disappearance, requiring continued investigation." Helen added a personal comment in the file appendix. Husband cooperative but statements lack consistency, especially regarding departure time and trip purpose. Behavior calm, good emotional control, tends to avoid details. With the verification results from the first 3 days, the investigation team agreed. The case showed unusual signs, no longer fitting a voluntary disappearance. The case retained code DPD-60, 51472, and shifted to active investigation status. On December 24, 1965, under Lieutenant Frank Lawson's direction, the investigation team conducted a check of Sharlene and Charles Harris's residence at 218 Elm Street. The 2-story house was in a quiet residential area, about 5 miles from downtown Denver, built in the 1930s and currently under renovation. When the team arrived, Charles Harris was home, presented keys, and agreed to let police enter for inspection. The search report clearly noted that the inspection was voluntary, without a compulsory warrant. Helen Vaughn was responsible for filming, photographing, and reporting descriptions of each area. The house was divided into 3 levels: ground floor with living room, kitchen, and small office; second floor with living quarters and 2 bedrooms, basement under repair. Upon entering, Lawson noticed construction materials everywhere: paint buckets, handsaws, planks, and unopened nail cans. No signs of struggle or forced entry from outside. Windows intact, locks undamaged, and snow in the yard showed no strange footprints in recent days. The living room was relatively tidy, with only a thin layer of dust on the coffee table, suggesting no recent cleaning. Helen noted that in the kitchen, the sink had 2 water glasses and a small plate. The refrigerator had food, but nothing unusual. In the office, they found several building material invoices, including 2 for cement and sand, dated December 15 and 17. Lawson ordered these documents seized for file cost verification. On the second floor, the master bedroom was neatly arranged, with no signs of searching or packing. The closet contained all of Sharlene's clothes, with no missing luggage or suitcases. Helen noted in the report that all the victim's personal items remained in place, from cosmetics and jewelry to identification papers. This contradicted the husband's statement that she took a small handbag in cash when leaving. Lawson asked Charles about this detail, and he replied briefly that she might have taken another bag and he wasn't sure where from. Helen's file note statement contradicts regarding items taken. After finishing the upper levels, the team moved to the basement, the area described in the file as under renovation. The stairs were narrow and dark, with a strong smell of fresh cement. The basement was about 40 square meters, with light-colored concrete flooring, many walls unpainted. In one corner, 3 unopened material bags and a small mixer. Charles said he had repoured the foundation the previous weekend because the old one cracked from moisture. Helen noted the thickness of the new cement layer, estimated at 3 to 4 inches, still with smooth, shiny marks. No unusual signs like stains, blood, or scratches on walls. Part of the ceiling had new lighting installed, with wires not yet bundled. Lawson walked around the basement, using a flashlight to check wall edges and drains, finding no foreign objects. He noted the basement was unusually clean compared to the unfinished construction upstairs. Helen suggested photographing the entire area, recording the new foundation corners and mixer position, and taking a dry cement sample from a wall corner for storage. The sample was sealed, numbered DPD-60 51472A, and sent to the Criminal Forensics Lab for material structure analysis. After completing the inspection, Lawson compiled a preliminary report. The initial conclusion stated clearly, the house showed no signs of break-in, no physical evidence of violence or criminal acts on the ground or upper floors. The basement was noted as under renovation, with new cement possibly matching the homeowner's repair statement. However, Lawson assessed the need to continue monitoring this area if new discoveries arose. The temporary report closed with the comment, No direct physical evidence found, insufficient basis to determine criminal activity at the residence. Helen added an appendix with personal notes, house in unfinished repair state, but basement floor distinctly more complete than the rest. Suggest noting this area for future checks. The residence inspection report was signed and confirmed at 4:30 p.m. on December 24, 1965, and filed in the Sharlene Harris missing person case with code DPD 60-51472. After the preliminary inspection of the Elm Street house, Lieutenant Frank Lawson directed the expansion of the search to the surrounding area. On December 26, 1965, the Denver Police Department mobilized additional personnel from the City Patrol Unit, coordinating with civilian volunteer units to sweep areas where the victim might have appeared or encountered an incident. The search radius extended from the South Park Hill residential area to nearby public spaces, including City Park, Smith Lake, and the segment of the South Platte River flowing through the western part of the city. These were all locations within 3 miles of the Harris home, convenient for travel on foot or by car. Area division was conducted using detailed topographic maps provided by the Urban Planning Office. Each search team consisted of 3 to 5 people, equipped with handheld radios, flashlights, and area maps. Helen Vaughn directly managed the central coordination team, responsible for recording field reports and collecting evidence. The search began at 7 a.m. with temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius and light snowfall. In City Park, teams swept along pedestrian paths and the sparse woods around Farrell Lake. They checked benches, public restrooms, and low-traffic areas. By midday, a volunteer discovered a light blue scarf draped over a steel fence near the Eastern Park Trail. Helen was called to verify. The evidence was described as approximately 1 meter long, made of fine wool yarn, with simple embroidered patterns at the ends. The victim's family later confirmed Sharlene owned a similar scarf, often worn in winter. However, due to prolonged exposure to snow and mud, it could not be visually confirmed as hers. Helen prepared an evidence seizure report, sealed it in a preservation bag, numbered DPD 60-51472B, and sent it to the forensics lab for fiber analysis and any organic traces. At Smith Lake, the search team used small boats to check around the water's edge. Thin ice on the lake surface made movement difficult, but they completed a sweep within 300 meters of the shore. No suspicious objects or signs of falling into the water were found. The rescue team proposed continued monitoring of this area in warmer weather, but Lawson noted there was no specific reason to deploy dredging. Simultaneously, a third team led by Sergeant Miller checked along the South Platte River banks, where there were many wild areas and thickets. Footprints mixed with animal tracks and continuous snowfall made identification difficult. No signs of the missing person or related vehicles were found. The teams returned to the station at 5 p.m. that day. The compiled report showed over 50 points checked within a 3-mile radius of the Harris home, including main roads, parking lots, train stations, and vacant lots near construction sites. No witnesses saw Sharlene after the afternoon of December 18. Local media were informed of the search, but did not publish widely, as the case was still classified as missing with unclear cause, lacking elements to be considered criminal. Helen completed an 8-page field summary, attaching area maps and the scarf's recovery location. The report stated, "No additional evidence found beyond the blue fabric item, no traces of violence, forced movement, or suspicious vehicles in the surveyed area." Lawson reviewed the report carefully, requesting additions on weather assessment and feasibility of continued searching. In the conclusion, he wrote, "Search operations temporarily suspended due to no new physical signs. Case retains initial investigation status. Helen proposed sending the evidence to the Criminal Forensics Lab for storage and testing when conditions allowed." By day's end, the Sharlene Harris missing person file was updated with the note, "Search operations completed, victim not found, no direct evidence determining location or disappearance circumstances. Case continues under adult missing with unclear cause. On December 27, 1965, after completing the field search with no results, Lieutenant Frank Lawson decided to summon Charles Harris to police headquarters for the first formal interrogation. The session began at 9 a.m. in Denver Police Department Interrogation Room 3, with Lawson, Officer Helen Vaughn, and a stenographer present. Charles Harris arrived on time, neatly dressed with a calm demeanor. He confirmed readiness to cooperate and agreed to the interrogation being recorded. Per procedure, Lawson explained the purpose was to clarify details about the last time the victim was seen and the husband's activities during the disappearance period. Charles began by repeating prior statements. Sharlene left home on the morning of December 18th, saying she would visit her sister in Kansas, taking a small handbag and some cash. He described her as tense and tired before leaving, unstable due to financial pressure. According to him, there was no argument, just minor differences over spending on house repairs. Lawson asked for more detail about that evening. Charles stated that after his wife left, he spent most of the time in the basement mixing cement, patching cracked foundation sections, and cleaning tools. Around 10 p.m., he went upstairs, found the house quiet, bedroom light still on, but Sharlene not there. He assumed she had left for Kansas as planned and went to sleep without further checking. The next morning, he said, her car was still parked outside, but he thought she traveled by other means. Helen Vaughn noted briefly, departure means undetermined, no witnesses confirming this time. Lawson continued asking about subsequent contacts. Charles replied he did not call his wife in the first 2 days because he didn't want to pressure her and thought she needed time to think. When asked why he didn't inform her family sooner, he said it wasn't necessary, as Sharlene was independent and might want distance from everyone. Lawson shifted to basement work. He requested detailed description of workload, materials used, and completion time. Charles replied, he started around 7 p.m. and finished near midnight, using 3 40-pound bags of cement and leftover sand from the previous week. When asked who supplied materials, he said he bought them at the Colfax Avenue store that afternoon. Helen cross-checked with the scene inspection report, cement purchase invoices dated December 15th, not 18 as he claimed. She passed the note to Lawson, who then asked, "Are you sure you bought it on the 18th and not earlier?" Charles paused for a few seconds, then said he might have mixed up the dates due to invoices being jumbled with prior purchases. Lawson made no comment, only noting minor contradiction in material purchase timing. The interrogation moved to verifying his presence at home. Lawson asked if anyone saw him that evening. Charles said neighbors couldn't confirm because everyone was indoors avoiding the cold. When asked about sounds or activity in the house, he said only the mixer and radio. Helen reminded Lawson that a witness near the Harris home reported hearing a loud noise around 9 p.m. But Lawson held that information for later verification. When asked about the marriage, Charles said they had been married 6 years, had disagreements but nothing serious. He described Sharlene as careful, perfectionist, sometimes annoyed by prolonged repairs. He completely denied arguments or violence. Helen asked, "So why did she leave without any luggage or belongings?" Charles replied, she only planned a short trip and might borrow from her sister. The report noted his reaction as calm, no emotional fluctuation. After nearly 3 hours, Lawson ended the interrogation. Helen's summary report stated, no major changes in statement, but several points needing verification, including contradictions on material purchase date and basement activity timeline. Lawson signed and added, statement cooperative but not convincing. Information about morning 18/12's departure lacks witness confirmation. Need further cross-checking with neighborhood verification results. The interrogation file was archived in case DPD 65-1472, labeled interview_1_complete, and sent to the Operations Analysis Unit. For statement, cross-referencing with scene data, marking the first step in witness statement and timeline scrutiny. After the first interrogation with Charles Harris, Lieutenant Frank Lawson directed Officer Helen Vaughn to continue expanding verification toward finances and the victim's daily activities to assess the voluntary departure possibility. On December 28, 1965, Helen contacted Denver Savings and Loan, where Sharlene Harris held a personal account. Transaction data for the past 3 months showed regular activity, mostly client transfers and small living expenses. However, one notable large transaction on December 13, 5 days before disappearance, Sharlene transferred $15,000 to her husband Charles Harris, noted as payment for home renovation costs. This amount nearly depleted her account balance. When Helen cross-checked with Charles's statement on repair costs, he had said material purchases were inexpensive and mostly covered by joint savings. The contradiction between reality and statement was noted in the temporary report. Next, Helen requested cash withdrawal data after December 18. Results showed on December 21, 2 days after Sharlene vanished, Charles withdrew the entire remaining balance in the couple's joint account, totaling $8,200. When Lawson reviewed the report, he requested additional analysis on the purpose of this money, but Charles provided no receipts, proving spending on repairs or other legal activities. Simultaneously, Lawson contacted Mountain Bell Telephone Company to review incoming and outgoing calls at the victim's address for the week before and after disappearance. Results: no long-distance calls to Kansas or neighboring states. Local calls were mainly to the accounting office and building supply store, matching that Sharlene worked normally through December 17. Helen also checked data at Denver's 3 main bus terminals and federal rail lines through the city. No passengers with Sharlene Harris's name or description appeared on ticket lists from December 18 to 20. Greyhound Bus and Union Pacific Rail booking systems recorded no corresponding cash transactions. The Transportation Office confirmed no travel permit requests or luggage shipments matching the victim's name. This information led Lawson to gradually rule out the victim, leaving Denver by public transport. Helen compiled all results into a 10-page report, including a chart listing financial transactions chronologically. The December 13th transfer and December 21st withdrawal were marked in red, with the assessment: no independent financial activity by the victim after December 17th. All transactions related to or executed by the husband. When Lawson reviewed the summary, he requested more information on Sharlene's spending habits and daily routine to determine trip preparation. Helen returned to the victim's parents. They said their daughter lived orderly, rarely spent large amounts without planning. She kept detailed expense notes in a ledger and always informed her mother when traveling. The family confirmed Sharlene had no close friends outside work, no debts, and never showed desire to leave Denver. When Helen asked about the transfer to Charles, the father said his daughter had complained that renovations took longer than expected, and Charles always needed more money. This information was filed under witness statements. Helen also contacted the power company and post office to confirm recurring bills for the Elm Street house. Results showed December bills were still paid by Sharlene, with no ownership transfer or service suspension requests. This further reinforced that she had no plans for long-term departure. By December 29, Lawson reviewed all newly collected data. In the compiled report to the chief's office, he wrote, "No financial, communication, or travel activity consistent with the hypothesis of voluntary city departure. Financial evidence shows significant husband dependence on wife's funds, with contradictions in statements regarding renovation fund use." Helen added a separate appendix listing points of concern: 1 large transfer immediately before disappearance, 2 cash withdrawal immediately after, 3 no proof of repairs corresponding to spent costs. The report ended with Helen's proposal: need to consider possibility of deceptive statements by the husband while expanding investigation toward finances. Lawson agreed, signed confirmation, and filed it in main case DPD 65-1472 with temporary note: voluntary departure possibility, unsupported by evidence, suspicion of concealment or deception by the husband. On December 30, 1965, After reviewing the financial verification results and reports confirming no signs of the victim leaving Denver, Lieutenant Frank Lawson decided to invite Charles Harris for a second session to clarify contradictions in his previous statements. The interrogation took place in Room 2 of the Denver Police Department, with Lawson, Officer Helen Vaughn, and a stenographer present. Charles was informed that the meeting was not accusatory, only to supplement details for the investigation. He appeared at 9 a.m., calm in demeanor, bringing a folder of building material invoices and a few design drawings. In the opening, Lawson asked him to recount the entire sequence of events in the days before and after his wife's disappearance. Charles's response was nearly identical to the previous one. Sharlene left home on the morning of December 18th, saying she was going to Kansas, and he worked in the basement all evening. When asked to specify exact start and end times for the work, he estimated around 7 p.m. to midnight, but did not remember precisely. Lawson asked about the quantity of materials used. He replied about 3 bags of cement, matching his prior statement. Helen noted in the margin, "Cannot be precisely verified due to mismatched invoice dates." Lawson continued asking about the cash withdrawal on December 21st, 2 days after the victim vanished. Charles explained he needed to pay subcontractors and buy more materials, but could not name the recipients. When asked for spending proof, he said he had lost the receipts. Helen marked a separate note, "Cannot prove purpose of large sum." The interrogation shifted to describing Sharlene's mood before leaving. Charles said she was stressed, worried, and wanted rest. He completely denied any conflict, affirming they talked normally. When Lawson asked if anyone witnessed that conversation, Charles replied, "No, because only the two were in the house." Lawson requested a description of Sharlene's clothing when leaving. He said light-colored sweater and wool coat, matching the family statement. However, when asked what she took, he said a small handbag, while Helen had noted during the house search no signs of missing personal items. This contradiction was recorded in the report. After nearly 2 hours, Lawson paused the session to review content. He observed Charles's statement repeated almost verbatim from the first, with no new details or verifying factors. Helen suggested probing deeper about the basement, the area he claimed to work in the night his wife vanished. When asked for more detail, Charles only said, "I patched a cracked section of foundation, small job, nothing noteworthy." Helen asked which part of the floor was patched. He vaguely replied, "Southwest corner," but gave no specific area. Lawson paused a few seconds, then asked, "Did you work alone?" "Yes, I worked alone." Helen continued, "You worked until midnight, so did neighbors hear noise?" "I don't know. I only had the radio on low, no noise." Each answer was recorded fully, concise, and lacking detail. When Lawson asked about Sharlene not taking identification papers, Charles appeared confused, saying maybe she took passport and cash from the drawer. Helen later confirmed in the file that the victim's passport and personal papers remained at home. The interrogation ended at 11:30 a.m. Lawson thanked him for cooperating and allowed him to leave. After Charles departed, Helen immediately completed an 8-page internal memo. In the assessment section she wrote, "Statement lacks detail, repeats previous. Many points unproven by actual data. Notable contradictions in material purchase dates, withdrawn amount, and basement work description." Helen also stated her view that the possibility Sharlene was harmed within the house needed consideration. Based on no evidence she left Denver, took no belongings, and appeared in no travel data. The report was sent directly to Lawson with a recommendation to request a warrant for expanded basement search to clarify Charles's statement. Lawson reviewed carefully but concluded insufficient legal basis for a deep search warrant or arrest. In his comments, he wrote, "No physical evidence determining criminal act. All current suspicions based only on statement contradictions." He emphasized the case had exceeded a routine missing person, but lacked grounds for criminal prosecution. That afternoon, Lawson sent a memo to the Investigation Oversight Office requesting temporary suspension of direct investigation pending analysis of seized evidence. Case file DPD 60-51472 was shifted to pending review status, marking a phase of suspended field activity and awaiting internal evaluation. With Helen Vaughn's final note, possibility of criminal act within the residence not ruled out, but current evidence insufficient for verification. In March 1966, after over 2 months of verification yielding no new information or physical evidence, the Denver Police Department Investigation Oversight Office decided to shift the Sharlene Harris disappearance to inactive status. This decision was based on internal assessment that all feasible investigation avenues had been pursued: residence checks, witness statement verification, financial sweeps, and city departure routes, but none sufficient to establish criminal suspicion. Lieutenant Frank Lawson's final 23-page compiled report was approved on March 11, 1966, concluding no direct evidence of crime or coercion in this matter. Lawson noted that while some minor contradictions in the husband's statements remained unresolved, they lacked legal basis for search or prosecution. In the attached memo, Officer Helen Vaughn submitted a separate comment, expressing that the case should remain monitored rather than fully closed, as the victim left no signs of voluntary departure and the residence environment still contains many suspicious points. However, her proposal was not accepted. A week later, Lawson signed the official notice to the victim's family, informing that the investigation was temporarily halted until new evidence or witnesses emerged. Sharlene's family expressed disappointment, but had no recourse. Local press ran a short item in the briefs section, summarizing woman missing since December not found. Police say case remains open, but no criminal elements detected. Throughout the rest of March, the file was finalized. Evidence including the cement sample, scarf, and photographic reports sealed, coded, and transferred to the Denver Police Department Central Storage for unsolved cases. Evidence was labeled DPD 60-51472A and B, stored in a metal file box with copies of witness statements. On March 25, 1966, Lawson signed confirmation of official file closure, status, inactive case, adult missing person. Helen Vaughn, while completing administrative procedures, quietly copied the entire original initial investigation file, including interrogation transcripts, basement photos, and financial reports, keeping a personal copy in her office. This action was not recorded officially, but reflected her unease with the premature conclusion. Weeks later, records from the Property Management Office noted Charles Harris sold the Elm Street house to a private investor below market value and left Denver. New address not provided, but in transfer papers, he declared intent to temporarily reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When Helen read this report, she added a final note to her backup copy: victim not found. New owner has left the area. Case stops at suspicion threshold, no conclusion. On March 31, 1966, the Sharlene Harris disappearance file was placed in long-term storage, shelved at Row 4, Section 12, under Inactive. 1960-1969. The storage room lights went out, and the case officially entered an indefinite silent phase. In March 2014, nearly half a century after the Sharlene Harris disappearance was shifted to inactive, the old house on Elm Street, formerly owned by the Harris couple, was purchased by a local construction company for renovation and rental. During basement repairs, the crew discovered a strange object deep in the old concrete. While drilling the foundation near the southwest wall corner, a worker noticed the drill bit hitting metal. After stopping the machine and clearing the area, they found a small oilcloth bag, hardened by moisture and cement dust. The bag was tightly tied with wire, buried about 30 centimeters under the concrete, in a position corresponding to the section previously noted as recently recemented. The site supervisor, aware of the legal value of the find, immediately contacted local police. Upon opening the bag at the scene, officers recorded 3 items inside: a lightly scratched diamond ring, a piece of light-colored fabric with dark brown stains suspected to be dried blood, and a quarter-folded yellowed paper with a few handwritten lines signed, "She." The evidence was seized, sealed in clear plastic bags, temporarily numbered DPD 140237, and transferred to the Denver Police Department for analysis. Since the discovery address matched an old missing person case in storage, the matter was quickly forwarded to the Cold Case Unit for review. Inspector Daniel Mercer, 51, head of the long-term case investigation team, received the file on March 12, 2014. He had years of experience in forensic investigation and scene reconstruction, having handled backlog cases from the 1970s. In the initial report, Mercer noted that 218 Elm Street was the site of Sharlene Harris's 1965 disappearance, stored under code DPD 65-1472, currently in long-term file storage. He requested the evidence vault check for any remaining samples from the old case. 3 days later, storage confirmed 1965 disappearance evidence still existed, a basement cement sample, a blue scarf found in City Park, and the original file including interrogation transcripts, house photos, and financial reports. Mercer cross-referenced old file descriptions with new scene reports, noting many matches. The oilcloth bag discovery location aligned with the recently recemented basement area, noted by Helen Vaughn in 1965, and the S signature on the paper could match the victim's common abbreviation in personal documents. He ordered evidence transfer to the Colorado State Forensics Lab for DNA analysis, blood sample identification, fabric material, and age verification. Simultaneously, Mercer began searching historical Denver missing persons lists from 1960, 1970, to see if any other cases fit the new evidence. The sweep showed only one related case. A woman residing at this address, missing December 1965, body not found, no criminal conclusion. Old system data confirmed victim name Sharlene Harris, 28 years old. Mercer immediately requested the original file from storage and began rechecking every document. He spent all of March 18 reading the old file. Charles Harris interrogation transcripts, Helen Vaughn's notes, search reports, and Lieutenant Frank Lawson's March 1966 closure conclusion. In his personal comment, Mercer wrote, "New evidence, likely directly related to 1965 disappearance. Location matches, objects contain organic elements, signature fits victim's handwriting sample, full verification needed." The report was sent to Cold Case Unit leadership with a proposal to reopen under code Cold Case Review. Harris, 1965. 2 days later, the request was approved. On March 20, 2014, file DPD 65-1472 was officially reactivated in the system, marking the first time in 48 years the Sharlene Harris disappearance was re-examined. Mercer signed the evidence receipt memo and noted on the first line of the new report, "Items seized in 2014 show signs of direct link to December 1965 disappearance event. Next step: cross-reference forensic results and sweep all original file information." After the case was reactivated, Inspector Daniel Mercer began thoroughly reviewing all original documents in file DPD 65-1472, stored in the Denver Police Department Central Archive. On March 22, 2014, he visited the archive, requesting the main file and related appendices for the Sharlene Harris disappearance. The file consisted of 5 paper volumes, over 300 pages total, typed and handwritten notes, with black and white scene photos of the Elm Street house, Charles Harris interrogation transcripts, witness statements, building material invoices, financial reports, and Lieutenant Frank Lawson's summary, signed in March 1966. Mercer spent days reading every section carefully. He noted key points: the husband's statement, emphasizing working in the basement on the night of December 18th, cement purchase on December 15th, and invoices signed by Charles Harris. Also Helen Vaughn's notes, the initial female officer, including a handwritten line in blue ink, Basement newly poured cement mortar smell, still very fresh. Mercer paid special attention to this detail as it matched the 2014 oilcloth bag discovery location. In old scene photos, he noticed a basement wall corner with different colored cement, apparently thicker than the rest. This was briefly noted by Lawson in the 1965 report as floor recently patched, no abnormalities. Cross-referencing timelines, Mercer realized the foundation repair perfectly aligned with the disappearance period. He created a comparison table: 12/15 cement purchase, 12/18 disappearance, 12/21 report to police. The intervals were too short for coincidence. Next, he read Helen's financial report, discovering the victim transferred $15,000 to her husband 5 days before vanishing. In Lawson's compiled report, this was noted as personal financial matter, not concerning. Mercer noted, potential financial motive, unexplored. After finishing the file volumes, he requested contact with Helen Vaughn, reportedly long retired. Personnel provided her residence address in Colorado Springs. On March 26, 2014, Mercer drove nearly 2 hours for a direct meeting. Helen Vaughn, then 74, lived in a small quiet house. She received him in the living room, surprised upon hearing the case name. When Mercer explained the new evidence discovery, she was silent for a long while. Then retrieved a small file box from an old wooden cabinet, saying it was her personal copy kept since 1966. Inside were faded photocopies of interrogation transcripts, scene maps, and a personal notebook. In the notebook, on page 18, a line in ink: basement floor distinctly complete, possibly poured in recent days. Helen said she had proposed an expanded search warrant, but was denied for lack of direct evidence. Mercer thanked her and requested copies of all documents. During the conversation, Helen recalled her impression of the husband: calm to an excessive degree, no emotion shown. She believed something was wrong in the house, especially the fresh cement smell she couldn't forget. Upon returning to Denver, Mercer immediately added an appendix to the reinvestigation file, compiling all old suspicions and new data. Basement recemented near disappearance time, evidence found exactly there, and financial transaction between spouses just before the victim vanished. His conclusion report stated, these factors form a meaningful chain, indicating need to re-examine the house scene to determine concrete layer nature and surrounding area. Mercer drafted an official document to Cold Case Unit leadership, proposing a warrant to research 218 Elm Street targeting basement floor structure analysis, potential evidence search, and sample cross-referencing with 1965 samples. In the proposal's conclusion, he stated, available data indicate Sharlene Harris's disappearance cause may be directly related to this house. Search is necessary to determine if criminal traces were previously overlooked. The report was signed March 28, 2014, and sent with all attachments including Helen Vaughn's note copies, marking the shift from file review to actual scene evaluation after nearly half a century of neglect. On April 2, 2014, after the Denver District Court approved a special search warrant for the house at 218 Elm Street, the Cold Case Unit investigation team, coordinating with the Colorado State Forensics Lab, conducted an excavation of the basement where the oilcloth bag had previously been discovered. The excavation began at 8 a.m. under the direct supervision of Inspector Daniel Mercer. The scene was completely sealed off, allowing only listed access members. The basement area was covered with white tarps, and specialized lighting was installed to ensure all activities were recorded. The forensic technical team used ground-penetrating radar to survey the foundation structure. Results displayed on the screen showed an abnormal void in the southwest corner of the floor, measuring approximately 1.2 x 1.5 meters, nearly half a meter deep from the surface. This data perfectly matched the location where the 2014 construction crew drilled concrete and found the oilcloth bag. Mercer ordered concrete cutting along the perimeter of the area shown on the GPR map. When the first concrete layer was separated, a musty smell mixed with old earth rose distinctly. Beneath the 35–40 centimeter thick cement was a darker soil layer, looser than normal. The forensics team began using hand tools to dig slowly layer by layer. Over an hour later, at a depth of 45 centimeters, a technician discovered a small ivory-white object protruding from the soil. It was part of a human hand bone. Digging was halted, and the scene was controllably expanded. Subsequent bone fragments gradually appeared: forearm bones, femur, and a fractured skull section. Near the skeleton area, forensics recovered a dark fabric piece with faint patterns, identified as synthetic fiber common in the 1960s. Mixed in the soil were small wood and mortar fragments, possibly construction materials. All were filmed, marked with grid coordinates. Mercer observed, noting each timeline milestone and directing the forensics team to collect soil samples, cement samples, and surrounding burial materials. By early afternoon, the entire bone set was fully extracted. The remains were placed in a specialized tray, arranged in anatomical order, then transferred upstairs for preliminary examination. The on-site forensic pathologist confirmed it was an adult human skeleton, female, estimated height 5'4", 5'5", age at death 25, 30. All. Estimated burial age, based on decomposition and surrounding soil, indicated 45 to 50 years. Cross-referencing with the 1965 missing person file data matched the victim Sharlene Harris's description. Besides the remains, two small objects were found in the soil: a white plastic button and a rusted metal piece, suspected to be a zipper pull. Helen Vaughn, the lead investigator from 1965, was invited to witness the excavation. She stood silently for a long while at the scene, confirming the discovery location matched her old notebook entry: southwest basement corner, cement smells fresh. Mercer recorded this in the report and thanked her for cooperation. Excavation ended at 5 p.m. that day. All evidence was sealed. Skeleton coded DPD-60, 51472C, dress fabric piece DPD-60, 51472D, soil and cement samples DPD-60, 51472E. Everything was transported by specialized vehicle to the Colorado State Forensics Lab in Aurora for detailed analysis. The 14-page scene report described each step meticulously, with attached photos and location diagrams. Mercer signed confirmation and included a request for DNA testing on bones, remaining tissue, and blood stains on the fabric. In his notes, he commented, "High likelihood, these are Sharlene Harris's remains based on age, gender, burial age, and discovery location." However, DNA results needed for official confirmation. The next day, the forensics lab received all evidence, creating an examination file under code CFSL 2014-248. The process included 4 steps: 1 gender determination via pelvis and skull analysis, 2 burial age estimation through carbon isotopes, 3 mitochondrial DNA analysis compared to relative samples if available, and 4 temporary cause of death based on bone mechanical traces. Meanwhile, Mercer's investigation team remeasured the entire basement, taking cement samples from other locations for composition comparison to determine pouring time. Preliminary results from the materials lab showed the southwest corner cement contained river sand with different properties from the rest, reinforcing that the area was separately constructed, not a minor repair as Charles Harris claimed in 1965. Mercer added this to a supplemental appendix, noting, "Scene evidence and construction material data confirmed the burial area was built during the time frame matching the victim's disappearance." This is a direct link between the scene and the 1965 case. The basement excavation concluded after 3 continuous days, with the floor temporarily restored, using protective wood panels to preserve structure. Mercer completed a report to Cold Case Unit leadership, concluding the matter had officially shifted from file review to criminal investigation based on field discoveries. On the final page he wrote the summary: "Human bones, dress fabric, and mixed construction materials found at the location noted in the 1965 file. Data matches victim Sharlene Harris. Recommend DNA testing at the Colorado State Forensics Lab to confirm victim identity and affirm connection to the nearly half-century-old disappearance. Forensic results from the Colorado State Forensics Lab were sent to the Denver Police Department on May 5, 2014, nearly a month after excavation completion. The over 40-page report included DNA analysis images, bone position maps, and chemical examination data. In the opening section, forensic experts confirmed the basement bones from 218 Elm Street had mitochondrial DNA sequences fully matching hair samples from Sharlene Harris, stored in the 1965 file. This hair was provided by the victim's family during the initial investigation, preserved in evidence bag DPD-60, 1472-B, and stored for nearly half a century. Match probability was 99.98%, sufficient to confirm the skeleton belonged to Sharlene Harris. The report also noted the skull had a large left side fracture, depressed temporal section, not from soil pressure, but direct blunt impact. 2 ribs had parallel cracks consistent with pre-death trauma. Temporary cause of death was determined as severe skull injury from a blunt object. The dress fabric recovered with the bones was tested for fiber type and dye, matching the description of the victim's last clothing, as stated by her mother in the 1965 report. This reinforced the hypothesis that the victim died in or immediately after disappearance, with the body buried in the basement along with personal items. Parallel to bone testing, document forensics experts completed analysis of the handwritten letter and envelope from the oilcloth bag. After comparing over 10 signature and note samples from Sharlene's work ledger, provided by family, the Colorado State Document Examination Institute concluded the letter handwriting matched Sharlene Harris's in stroke style, slant, and abbreviation. More notably, saliva DNA analysis on the envelope seal flap fully matched Charles Harris's standard DNA sample. This meant he sealed the letter. The forensics lab assessed high likelihood the letter was written by the victim and sealed by her husband. Though most letter content had faded, the first lines were readable. "I will talk to you tonight. She." Mercer reviewed all results and began reconstructing the event sequence based on old and new evidence chains. Per the file, on December 13, 1965, Sharlene transferred $15,000 to her husband for home renovation. On December 15th, Charles purchased more cement, sand, and rebar, with confirming invoices. On December 18th, the couple appeared together at the Colfax Avenue supply store at 5:30 p.m., the last time Sharlene was seen alive. That evening, per Charles's statement, he worked in the basement until midnight to patch cracked foundation. However, material testing showed the cement over the body was entirely new, not a patch. This proved the floor was reconstructed immediately after Sharlene vanished. On December 20th, Charles did not report his wife missing. On December 21st, the victim's parents reported it. Just 1 day later, he withdrew the remaining joint account balance. In March 1966, he sold the house and left Denver for Minnesota. Based on these milestones, Mercer built the most logical scenario. After returning from the supply store, a financial and renovation-related argument occurred between the couple. During the conflict, Sharlene was struck with a blunt object causing skull injury, dying on the spot or shortly after. Charles concealed the body by digging the basement foundation, burying it with some items, and repouring concrete to hide it. This occurred within 48 hours of disappearance. Subsequent actions: withdrawing money, silence, not immediately reporting police, indicated deliberate concealment rather than panic or search. Mercer compiled results in a temporary report to Cold Case Unit leadership. The conclusion stated, "Physical evidence confirms victim identity, specifies death location and body concealment method. Financial data and evidence chain match timeline, ruling out voluntary disappearance. Concrete structure, bone testing, and handwritten letter all lead to one conclusion: victim murdered at residence." In the appendix, Mercer presented a timeline diagram with 4 main phases: 1 12/15, material purchase; 2 12/18, disappearance; 3 12/19, 20 concrete pouring; 4 1966, house sale and Denver departure. The report was signed May 10, 2014, with a final note. Preliminary conclusion: murder and on-site body concealment. Need expanded investigation into motive, weapon, and action sequence. After forensic results confirmed victim identity and the preliminary report was completed, Inspector Daniel Mercer expanded the investigation by collecting statements from surviving witnesses who lived near Elm Street in 1965. Archive data showed most original file witnesses had left the area or passed away, with only a few still in Denver or nearby. The list included 4 Evelyn Moore, 90, living across from 218 Elm Street; Robert Quinn, 83, former neighborhood paper delivery; and the Jensen couple, previously 2 blocks from the Harris home. The first interview was conducted on May 20, 2014, at Evelyn Moore's home, noted in the 1965 file as heard noise on disappearance night. Mrs. Moore, elderly but lucid, recalled that night clearly. She said, around past 9 p.m. on December 18, 1965, while reading in the living room, she heard 2 loud thumps from the Harris house, followed by a sound like something heavy dragged across the floor. She looked out the window, but saw no ground floor light, only the basement light flickering. About 15 minutes later, she saw Charles Harris exit the back door into the yard, wearing a dark coat, bending down near the flower bed before going back inside. She thought he was cleaning materials and did not report to police. The next morning, while shoveling snow, she saw the basement light still on, despite daylight. Mercer asked about timing between sounds and Harris's actions. She said, within half an hour. These details were recorded and confirmed with Mrs. Moore's signature, plus a handwritten statement. Next, Mercer met Robert Quinn, who delivered morning papers in the area at the time. He said on December 19 morning, delivering to the Harris home, he noticed front yard snow cleared into small piles, while other houses remained covered. Strangely, the back basement walkway had long skid marks like something heavy dragged through. He said, the back door was shut tight, no movement inside. These details were noted in the report, cross-referenced with Mrs. Moore's account, showing matching timing. The third interview was with the Jensens, now in Boulder. They confirmed in December seeing a material delivery truck at the Harris home twice, once mid-month, the second a few days before Christmas. Mr. Jensen remembered clearly because the truck arrived later than usual after 8 p.m., and he heard the mixer running at night. His wife said, Sharlene was cheerful, often greeting neighbors, but after mid-December, she no longer appeared. When asked if they saw the couple together after the 18th, both said no. Mercer compiled all new statements and compared with original file data. Mrs. Moore and Mr. Quinn's information perfectly matched descriptions of basement light on, evening sounds, and next morning snow clearing. These were factors Helen Vaughn noted in 1965, but not deeply examined. Mercer forwarded recordings and statements to the police legal department for late statement legal value verification. Assessment confirmed that despite nearly half a century, witness statements were acceptable if recorded, signed, and cross-referenced with existing data. All 3 statements were formalized as supplemental appendices to the reinvestigation file, numbered DPD 60, 51472, F to H. In the compiled report, Mercer wrote, surviving witnesses described the event sequence of December 18th night and December 19th morning with high consistency. Gathered information reinforces the hypothesis of victim death at home and Charles Harris's unusual behavior during that time frame. The report conclusion stated, new statements directly supplement forensic results, aiding reconstruction of suspect actions in the disappearance window. The document was sent to Cold Case Unit leadership on May 25, 2014, with an official recommendation that these statements qualify for reinvestigation file inclusion and may be used as circumstantial evidence when the case advances to prosecution phase. On June 2, 2014, the Colorado State Forensics Lab completed the comprehensive examination report on the evidence collected in the Sharlene Harris case, sending it to the Denver Police Department Cold Case Unit. The report consisted of 62 pages with detailed image appendices on the skull, construction materials, and DNA comparison results. In the introduction, the examination team affirmed the victim's cause of death as severe skull trauma from a strong blunt impact, resulting in a depressed fracture of the left temporal bone extending to the occipital area. The injury level was described as direct impact with strong force, incompatible with accidental fall or ordinary collision. Comparison of the skull indentation with household object models showed the trauma area size and shape nearly perfectly matched the head of a 4-pound concrete hammer, similar to the tool listed in Charles Harris's material purchase invoice dated December 15, 1965. The sharp fracture, without sliding marks, indicated the blow was delivered at close range, from above downward. The report also noted 2 minor cracks in the 4th and 5th right ribs, likely from impact during body concealment. Time of death was estimated to coincide with the disappearance period, between December 18 and 1965. Samples collected at the scene were processed independently. The dark stained dress fabric was confirmed as human blood, type O, matching Sharlene Harris's blood type in old medical records. Witness DNA analysis fully matched the bone samples. Additionally, cement microfibers on the fabric surface were identical to basement concrete samples, indicating direct contact with the poured floor area. The document examination report supplemented final results on the handwritten letter and envelope from the oilcloth bag, handwriting confirmed as the victim's with saliva DNA on the envelope seal flap, matching Charles Harris's sample. The envelope sealed by the suspect led experts to conclude the letter was written under abnormal circumstances, possibly after the victim was restrained. Mercer received the full report on June 4 and immediately organized an internal technical meeting to compile investigation results. The nearly 4-hour meeting included 3 forensic experts, 2 field investigators, and the department's legal advisor. Mercer presented the entire evidence chain, from oilcloth bag discovery to basement excavation, DNA testing, witness statements, and physics results. Data was projected on a large screen, with each part tightly consistent, no internal contradictions. In the summary, he stated, compilation of forensic scene and financial data indicates the victim was intentionally murdered at her residence, body buried under cement foundation for concealment. This action was prepared immediately after conflict, showing calculation to avoid detection. Mercer also requested the materials lab finalize a supplemental report on cement composition. Results returned on June 6 showed the southwest basement corner concrete had distinctly different additive ratios and sand type from the rest of the floor, proving separate construction, not part of old repairs. Additionally, mortar fragments retained hand-mixing blade marks, matching a small manual mixer listed in the December 1965 material purchases. Mercer concluded this was not foundation repair, but intentional concealment. He drafted a 28-page report, summarizing forensic results and expert analysis, sending it to Cold Case Unit leadership and the Denver District Attorney. In the conclusion, he wrote, physical evidence shows victim death from skull trauma by blunt object, matching concrete hammer purchased before disappearance. DNA on dress fabric matches victim, saliva DNA on letter matches suspect. Scene and materials confirm new concrete pouring after death. All data rules out accident. Mercer further analyzed motive. Per financial data, the victim transferred most savings to her husband for home renovation. The remaining joint account was withdrawn immediately after disappearance. He wrote, primary motive determined as financial combined with personal control. Suspect showed asset appropriation, violent act when opposed, then concealment using construction expertise. The report ended with professional assessment. The case determined as premeditated murder, victim died at residence, body concealed on site via construction techniques. Mercer signed the final section, Stamped forensic final summary, June 2014, sent to the district attorney, and filed a copy in original case DPD 65-1472. After the forensic report and expert conclusion were sent to the Denver County District Attorney, Inspector Daniel Mercer coordinated with the Colorado State Prosecutor's Office to initiate suspect location and arrest procedures for Charles Harris. Based on residency records and Social Security data, the investigation team determined Harris was 83, retired, residing at a nursing home in Rochester, Minnesota. Immigration records noted he moved there in 2002, no new criminal record, living under private medical care at St. Agnes Home. Mercer sent a support request to the Rochester Police Department and the Minneapolis FBI field office to verify exact location and health status. Results confirmed he was lucid, able to communicate normally, though frail due to age. On October 20, 2014, Mercer and the case prosecutor submitted to the Denver District Court a request for a federal arrest warrant charging Charles Harris with second-degree murder based on verified forensic evidence, witness statements, and financial results. The warrant was approved on October 28, effective nationwide. 2 weeks later, a joint federal agents and Minnesota State Police team executed the arrest. On November 14, 2014, at 8:15 a.m., the investigation team arrived at St. Agnes Home, where Harris resided in long-term care. The arrest proceeded orderly, with facility representatives and medical staff present. When informed of the warrant, Charles Harris did not resist, only asking briefly for the Denver matter. Mercer, on site, confirmed identity and read suspect rights per regulation. He noted Harris maintained calm demeanor, showing no surprise or panic. After procedures, the suspect was taken to Olmsted County Jail awaiting extradition. That day, Mercer held a brief press conference at Denver Police Headquarters, confirming the matter involves new forensic evidence in a 1965 disappearance, but providing no specifics as the case was in prosecution phase. On November 18, the Minnesota court approved Colorado's extradition request. Harris was transferred to Denver Police under 2 federal agents' supervision, traveling by commercial flight per civil extradition rules. He arrived at Denver County Jail in stable health. Upon intake, detention staff noted Harris remained cooperative, only asking, "Is the house still there?" That evening in Denver, the prosecutor's office officially announced the indictment charging Charles Harris with second-degree murder under Colorado Revised Statutes 18-3-103, based on evidence gathered in the Sharlene Harris case reinvestigation. The 13-count indictment summarized the entire physical evidence chain: DNA results confirming victim identity, construction traces matching disappearance timeline, weapon identified matching concrete hammer in material invoice, and suspect DNA on sealed envelope. Additionally, the indictment emphasized financial motive, with post-disappearance withdrawal evidence and intentional concealment. Mercer signed the accompanying report, concluding evidence compilation shows intentional criminal act, not impulsive. Suspect exploited professional expertise to conceal body and stage scene to evade legal pursuit. On November 20, 2014, Harris made his initial Denver District Court appearance via video link, with court-appointed counsel present. The judge ordered detention without bail, citing crime severity and suspect's past evidence concealment. The arrest and extradition closed a nearly 50-year interrupted investigation chain, officially returning the Sharlene Harris case to criminal proceedings with fully re-verified files, evidence, and witnesses. The trial of Charles Harris officially opened on the morning of June 8, 2015, at the Denver District Court, nearly half a century after Sharlene Harris disappeared. Courtroom 4B was specially arranged, with the victim's family, local reporters, and many cold case unit members who had contributed to restarting the case in attendance. Before the trial began, Chief Judge Raymond Holloway read a case summary, emphasizing the investigation's historical nature and requiring the jury to consider all evidence objectively, regardless of elapsed time. Charles Harris, now 84, was wheeled into the courtroom, wearing a gray suit, white hair, calm expression. He was represented by public defender Martin Keating, while prosecution was handled by Colorado Deputy District Attorney Alicia Fremont. Ms. Fremont opened with a brief statement. "This is not a case of the past, but a case of justice buried under cement for 49 years. She began presenting the physical evidence chain, the ring, fabric piece, handwritten letter, and remains excavated from the old house basement. Scene photos, DNA reports, and material samples were projected on a large screen for the jury." Miss Fremont explained each detail. Mitochondrial DNA on bones matched Sharlene Harris's hair sample. Concrete over the remains differed clearly from the rest of the floor. Saliva DNA on the letter envelope matched Charles Harris. No element in this evidence chain was created by time. They remained exactly where placed, under the cement poured by the defendant himself. Miss Fremont said, calm but firm. Next, prosecution called expert witness Dr. Laura Keene, Colorado State forensic pathologist, who directly examined the skeleton. She confirmed cause of death as skull trauma from a blunt object. Fracture perfectly matching the concrete hammer in Charles Harris's December 15, 1965, material invoice. She added, "The clear fracture could not be accidental, but a direct strong blow from a right-handed person standing close to the victim." Prosecution then presented reinvestigation witness statements. Evelyn Moore, now 91, was wheeled in. In brief testimony, she recounted hearing 2 loud thumps that night, seeing the Harris basement light on all night, and snow cleared from the yard the next morning. Her statement matched Officer Helen Vaughn's old report and Robert Quinn's new one, the morning paper delivery man. Both testimonies were accepted for consistency and alignment with forensic timing. Prosecution also called Inspector Daniel Mercer, the reinvestigator, as an investigative witness. He presented to the jury the full case reconstruction process, from 2014 oilcloth bag discovery to basement excavation, evidence analysis, and financial cross-referencing. Mercer affirmed, "No data in the file contradicts the hypothesis that Sharlene Harris was killed in her own home by the husband she trusted." Defense began on the trial's 3rd day. Attorney Martin Keating focused on time, arguing evidence value diminished over nearly 50 years. He contended no direct witnesses to violence, an envelope DNA match, only proves client presence, not criminal act. He suggested considering original evidence storage errors, as 1960s procedures did not meet current standards. However, prosecution countered that all 1965 samples were properly sealed and integrity verified by seal chain numbers, showing no tampering. Miss Fremont ended rebuttal succinctly, "Time does not blur crime, only makes truth wait longer to be heard." On the 5th day, the court reviewed all forensic reports. Independent experts were called to confirm DNA result consistency. Reports concluded bone-hair DNA match probability 99.98%, envelope saliva. DNA 100% match to Charles Harris. These results, with witness statements and financial evidence, formed a solid chain. In closing arguments, Ms. Fremont emphasized motive, financial, and control. She presented a timeline chart. Sharlene transferred money to husband December 13th, killed December 18th. Remaining account withdrawn 2 days later. This was calculated, not impulsive. He not only killed his wife, but buried her under the foundation she paid to build, she told the jury. When allowed to speak, Charles Harris said briefly, "I never meant to harm her. It was all a misunderstanding, and time made everyone forget I lost too." He did not look at the victim's family. The trial lasted 10 days. On June 18, 2015, after 6 hours deliberation, the 12-member jury returned a unanimous verdict. Charles Harris guilty of second-degree murder. As the verdict was read, the courtroom heard only the sobs of a victim's niece, born after Sharlene disappeared. Judge Holloway read the sentence. Based on irrefutable evidence and crime severity, the court sentences defendant Charles Harris to 20 years imprisonment at a Colorado State Correctional Facility. No parole eligibility for the first 10 years. Harris only nodded slightly, no reaction. Mercer stood at the back, silent. After nearly half a century, the Sharlene Harris disappearance was officially closed with a guilty verdict, the reinvestigation file becoming one of Colorado's model cold case resolutions. In September 2016, just over a year after conviction, Charles Harris died at Cannon City Correctional Facility, Colorado, aged 85. The prison report recorded cause of death as heart failure due to age, no abnormalities. His body was cremated per will instructions. No relatives claimed ashes. When notified to Denver police, Inspector Daniel Mercer, who directly revived and completed the case, was tasked with the cold case unit's official closure report. The report, numbered DPD 65-1472 final, nearly 90 pages, compiled the entire process from the 1965 disappearance to 2015 closure. In the introduction, Mercer wrote, "The Sharlene Harris case exemplifies investigation persistence and evidence preservation value. Nearly half a century of silence did not erase Data's voice." The report detailed key phases: initial investigation suspended for lack of evidence, file archive 1966, new evidence in 2014 renovation, basement excavation and remains identification via DNA, forensic conclusion, prosecution, trial, and final sentence. Mercer attached all scene photos, witness statements, invoice copies, and DNA reports, coded and digitized for Denver's cold case archive system. In the professional assessment, he noted this as one of Colorado's oldest cases, fully resolved by DNA evidence. Per State Justice Department statistics, the Sharlene Harris case became the third U.S. file, with over 45 years between disappearance and victim identification. Mercer recorded, forensic science factors, especially mitochondrial DNA and ground-penetrating radar, were decisive in solving this case. Without 1965 evidence preservation, no 2014 results. The report dedicated a chapter recognizing prior investigators, Lieutenant Frank Lawson and Officer Helen Vaughn, who laid the initial file foundation despite insufficient evidence then. Mercer wrote, "Helen Vaughn's brief note on fresh cement smell in the basement guided us nearly half a century later." One notebook line became Justice's starting point. In the operational summary, Mercer analyzed lessons, long-term evidence preservation importance, cold case management procedures, and cross-state federal cooperation value in suspect location. He proposed adding the Sharlene Harris case to Denver police forensic training as a typical delayed investigation scenario. After report completion, the original file and evidence were transferred to Denver PD Cold Case Archive, long-term storage. There, the file was kept in a specialized cabinet with decontaminated and separately boxed evidence, oilcloth bag, dress fabric, diamond ring, letter copy, and cement samples. The digitized system also held full document, photo, and DNA report copies for research or training. In November 2016, the Denver City Council passed a resolution designating 218 Elm Street a historic crime landmark. Historical crime site, recognizing the case's documentary value to forensic investigation. The house basement was renovated, preserving the excavation area structure, with a small plaque noting, "Here, truth buried for nearly 50 years was found." The city tourism agency later added the site to special historical tour lists, alongside other famous Denver cases. In the report's final conclusion, Mercer wrote, "The Sharlene Harris case proves justice does not expire with time. Though the perpetrator is gone, truth determination still matters to the community, victim's family, and every investigator. It shows persistence, science, and faith in justice's power." The report was signed December 20, 2016, exactly 51 years from Sharlene Harris's last sighting. The final line in the Denver PD Cold Case Archive file read, "Case DPD 65-1472, resolved 2015. Archived December 2016, status, closed with conviction." With this outcome, the case was officially recognized as one of Colorado's most exemplary forensic operational achievements, closing a half-century journey to restore justice for a woman once buried in silence. The story of the Sharlene Harris case in Denver in 1965, resolved after nearly half a century thanks to DNA technology and the persistence of investigators, is not just a closed criminal case, but also a reflection of enduring values in modern American society: faith in justice, the power of science, and the importance of personal responsibility in relationships. The case began with a seemingly minor detail: a freshly poured layer of cement in the basement, overlooked in 1965, but becoming pivotal when technology advanced enough for DNA analysis in 2014. From this, we clearly see that the truth does not vanish. It only waits to be re-examined with a more careful eye. In today's society, where information and data are meticulously stored, this story reminds us that every action, though obscured by time, leaves a trace. Charles Harris's behavior, from exploiting his wife's finances to concealing his crime within their own home, highlights the dangers of control and violence in marital relationships, an issue that remains prevalent in America. The case also conveys a message about the importance of recording, reporting, and preserving evidence, as the careful storage of the hair sample, Officer Helen Vaughn's handwritten notes, or the 1965 evidence reports, enabled justice to be served half a century later. In an ever-changing society, this story encourages Americans today to continue trusting the legal process, the value of truth, and scientific technology. Justice may be slow, but as the Sharlene Harris case proves, it never disappears, as long as there are people who never stop seeking it. If you believe that truth and justice, even when buried, deserve to be uncovered, please subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more cold cases illuminated after decades. Thank you for following Sharlene Harris's journey. See you in the next video, where the past speaks once again.